adil bir külfet paylaşımı suretiyle
We have laid the foundations for a stronger NATO, one in which European allies assume greater responsibility. Our military capabilities are strengthened through fair burden sharing, and alliance as a whole emerges more resilient here in Ankara. Allow me to make one point very clearly. As Turkiye, we have not benefited from the post-Cold War peace dividend to the same extent as many of our European friends. Many of the crises and conflicts of recent decades have unfolded in our immediate neighborhood. We have had to confront the threats surrounding us, foremost among them terrorism. There were times when we were left to stand alone and subjected to unfair treatment. As a result, we were often compelled to take matters into our own hands. Today, however, in terms of defense spending, military capabilities and the defense industrial base that underpins them, we are well ahead of many of our allies. Dear friends, at today's summit, we focused on implementing the commitments made last year in The Hague. Secretary General Recep also presented in concrete terms the progress achieved by the allies. On this occasion, we also translated our multidimensional and gradually expanding contributions to the alliance into tangible commitments. The NATO Ankara Summit demonstrated in the clearest possible terms the spirit of allied solidarity. All allied nations were represented at the level of heads of state and government. We regard this as yet another testament to the confidence placed in Turkiye and to the standing of our diplomacy. As you know, President Trump participated in the summit, and he clearly stated that our countries hosting the event played a key role in him making this decision. It was very meaningful for him to underline our friendship. His statement was valuable to us, so let me take this opportunity to thank my dear friend on this occasion. Distinguished members of the press, Turkey has been a member of the alliance since 1952. But we are also heirs to a great nation whose land forces trace their history back more than 2,000 years, a nation whose past has been woven thread by thread with glorious victories. By joining NATO, we contributed to the alliance, not only our geostrategic position at the crossroads of three continents, but also the military tradition and art of warfare forged over 2 millennia on the battlefield. Our cherished Turkish armed forces possess the strength and capability to neutralize any threat to our national security at its source. As of today, we command NATO's second largest standing land force. For decades, the security of NATO's southeastern flank has, to a significant extent, been entrusted to Turkey. We have honored that responsibility. We have always fulfilled our obligations within the alliance with distinction, stepped forward whenever needed, and never hesitated to bear our share of the burden. Turkey ranks among the leading contributors to NATO operations and missions, as well as to the alliance common funded budgets. As NATO enters this new era, in which collective defense has once again become the alliance's core mission, we stand ready to assume greater responsibility in ensuring fair burden sharing.
hava polisliği
Beginning in
misyonu
August,
kapsamında
our F-16 fighter aircraft will be deployed to Estonia as part of NATO's air policing mission.
NATO KFOR harekatının
We will
Ekim ayında
continue to
üstlendiğimiz
command
komutasını
the NATO-led KFOR mission in Kosovo, a responsibility we assumed last October through the end of September 2026.
2029 yıllarında
In 2028 and
mukabele
2029,
kuvvetine komuta edeceğiz.
Turkey will command the NATO Allied Reaction
sayamayacağımız
Force.
Nice misyona
Beyond
ciddi
these,
katkılar
we continue to make substantial contributions to numerous other NATO missions.
Birleşik Krallık
On the
arasında
occasion of the
imzalanan
summit,
güvenlik ve savunma ortaklığı belgesi
the Security and Defence Partnership Agreement signed between Turkey and the United Kingdom on the margins of the summit is particularly
savunmaya ayrılan
significant.
kaynaklar elbette
The level of defence expenditure and resources allocated to defence are of course important, but genuine deterrence rests on three pillars:
üstün teknoloji,
three-dimensional
yeterli
depth,
ölçek ve
which are
sürdürülebilir
technological
üretim.
superiority, sufficient scale, and sustainable
Yeni
production
dönemde
capacity.
Bu kabiliyetler
In the coming
hem
period,
caydırıcılığın
these
hem de
capabilities
dayanıklılığın
will
en
form
güçlü
the
saç
strongest
ayakları olacaktır.
pillars of both deterrence and
Ülkemizin
resilience.
savunma sanayi alanında son 23 yılda gerçekleştirdiği
Our country
büyük atılım herkesin malumu.
has undergone a great transformation and breakthrough over the past 23 years in the defense
kendi
industry.
gemilerini üreten, kendi hava savunma sistemlerini
Today,
geliştiren ender
Turkey is among the
müttefiklerden
few allies capable of manufacturing its own fighter aircraft, tanks, naval vessels, and indigenous air defense systems.
savaş gemilerinde
We rank
dünyada
among the world's leading countries in the manufacturing of unmanned aerial vehicles, unmanned maritime systems, and warships, while continuing to equip our armed forces with indigenous capabilities. We are also supporting our allies through the export of our defense products. Members of the press,
konuşmamda da ifade ettim.
as I stated in my remarks this morning, the European Union initiatives in the field of defense industry should complement NATO
yol açmamalı.
and avoid creating unnecessary duplication.
Her fırsatta
I raise this important point at every opportunity, in every forum, with both our allies and the leadership of the European Union.
Şurası bir hakikatti. Türkiye gibi
The fact remains
Avrupa Birliği
that
üyesi olmayan müttefikler
unless allies that are not members of the European Union, such as Turkey,
tam olarak dahil
are fully
edilmediğinde
included in the
bu
Union's defense
girişimlerin
initiatives,
etkileri
the effectiveness of those initiatives will inevitably remain limited.
müttefikler arasında
On the
savunma
other hand,
sanayi ürünlerinin ticaretine yönelik
although
bazı engellemeler
some restrictions on trade in defense industry products among allies have diminished, some barriers still remain.
ve fakatsız
These
biçimde
obstacles
bir an önce
must be removed
kaldırılması gerekiyor.
without qualification
Bu
or delay.
hususa zirve bildirisinde de özel olarak
We ensured that
vurgu
this
yapılmasını
particular
sağladık.
issue received explicit recognition in the summit declaration.
Çizmek durumundayız.
Let me reiterate one point in
NATO
particular.
birbirine bağımlı
NATO
ülkelerin değil,
must be
birbirine
an alliance
güç
of
katan
allies that
müttefiklerin
strengthen one
ittifakı
another,
olmalıdır.
not an alliance of countries that become dependent on one another.
Yaptığımız savunma sanayi
We hosted
forumu
the Defense
vesilesiyle
Industry Forum as part of the
savunma
summit,
sektörü ile daha sıkı işbirlikleri
and
geliştirilmesine
the
dair
Forum
Ankara
aimed at
stratejisi
fostering closer cooperation between NATO and the defense industry,
kıymetli
for which we've had the allies endorse the Ankara strategy.
İki ana tehditten biridir. Son dönemdeki tüm zirvelerimizde bu
Terror is one of the two main threats faced by NATO allies. And we have discussed the steps that can be taken in this regard at every summit. Here in Ankara, We once again underscored the importance of genuine allied solidarity in the fight against terrorism. We have also covered the war in Ukraine during our discussions, which has now entered its fifth year. What has increasingly become a war of attrition has turned into a killing machine, claiming tens of thousands of casualties every month. Turkey, since the very beginning of the war, has consistently advocated dialogue and diplomacy as the only path to a solution. Both President Putin and President Zelensky, and as I noted this morning, are allies.
Well, we will just leave President Recep Tayyip Erdogan there as he wraps up this summit, this NATO summit, calling it historic and saying solidarity with allies was very apparent. And Sinem Kosoglu is live for us from that summit. And Sinem, really lauding this particular organization, saying they're laying the foundations for its strength in the future.
Well, apparently Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the host of this year's NATO Leaders Summit, is very happy about the outcome, and we heard the NATO officials, including the Secretary General, calling the summit as a very successful one. The very first day of the summit, which was yesterday, was mainly a political drama, especially after US President Donald Trump's backlash on the NATO allies, whom he said didn't stand with the United States in the war in Iran, and he accused many of the allies for not performing their duties as NATO allies. But today we see that all those these agreements among the allies have been in a way resolved. They have come to a consensus. A common ground has been found among them. But as per Turkey, I must admit that President Erdogan might be a little bit disappointed, because yesterday we heard Donald Trump saying that he would allow F-35.
Sinem Kosoglu there joining us live from the NATO Summit, which is it wraps up in Ankara. Of course, for more details as to what was said there, go to our website, aljazeera.com. The news does continue after Inside Story.